Brothers and friends, thank you for joining us for episode 64 of our Virtual Masonic Education series presented by the Rubicon Masonic Society. It's hard to believe that we are at episode 64. Time sure does fly when you're having a good time. For those of you who are coming back to join us again, we thank you. We appreciate your continued support and participation in our virtual Masonic education events. And for those of you who are perhaps joining us for the first time, we of course welcome you. We hope you thoroughly enjoy the education discussed tonight and come back for future episodes as well. For anyone that may be watching this online on our channel, on our YouTube channel, make sure you never miss an episode by joining us at a live presentation, and that can be done by RSVPing at rubiconmasonicSociety.com/RSVP. Very special thanks, as always, to our good friends and brethren at the Ware Lodge of Research and at Lexington Lodge No. 1, and of course, all of the brothers at the Rubicon Masonic Society. There's a lot of work that goes into keeping the Rubicon Masonic Society going for all of our brethren across the world. And of course, I want to specifically thank our executive officers, John Bizak, Dan Kemble, Alan Martin, Jerry Johnston, John Sissel, etc., for continuing to make sure that we do the best we can to provide the education that all brothers are looking forward to. With that being said, Worshipful Brother Alan Martin, would you please deliver the opening devotion, sir?
Certainly, worshipful brothers, let's pray. Grand Architect of the universe, we ask your blessings this evening as we gather once more to continue our exploration of Freemasonry. We pray for open minds so that we may be better enabled to receive, understand, and apply our new knowledge in such a manner that may lead us to become better men and Masons. These things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
So mote it be.
So mote it be.
Thank you, brother. Brethren and friends, our virtual Masonic education aims to help us try to become better men, always devoted to our family, our faith, our country. May we all come together tonight to learn, to subdue our passions, to discipline our minds, and to improve ourselves through the tools and brotherhood of Freemasonry. Any opinions expressed during this education will be those of the presenter or the participant. They do not necessarily reflect the views of any lodge or Grand Lodge or the Rubicon Masonic Society. By participating with us, you do consent to our guidelines, and our full disclaimer can be found at rubiconmasonicsociety.com/disclaimer. As you all know, these are not tiled meetings. Masons and non-Masons are more than welcome to attend and participate, so please be mindful, as always, that anything discussed should be suitable for Masons of all degrees as well as non-Masons. Gentlemanly manners are to be expected at all times. Please, no smoking, no alcohol, food, or foul language, no discussion of politics or religion. Attendees may be removed if not following protocol. We have not removed anyone yet. In an effort to best assure that our virtual meetings do go as good as possible, make sure you are unmuted when you're speaking. Recommended attire for each meeting is coat and tie. Please type your name and any appropriate Masonic title or location under your video so we know who you are, where you're from. If you're not a Mason, please simply type guest after your name. Please enable your video camera so we can see you. Please keep your microphone muted when not speaking. Please turn off other computer programs. And of course, as always, please be patient should any technical difficulties occur. With that being said, we will now proceed to the business of the evening. We have a very special presentation tonight by Brother Jeremiah Beaver and Worshipful Brother Bizak. Will you please do the honors of introducing tonight's special guest?
I will, thank you. Jeremiah Beaver is an Indiana Mason. He's from Broad Ripple 643 and Vitruvian 767. And the Dwight L. Lodge of Research is under dispensation. He's currently senior steward at Broad Ripple, and he's the chair of the Masonic Education Committee there and the Illumination Program. And he's junior steward at the Dwight Smith Lodge of Research. He was raised in 2023, and he's the recipient of the Grand Lodge of Indiana's Rookie Award. He's a video producer by trade, and he has a professional background, including 20 years of live music promotion, journalism, art design, and filmmaking. In his free time, he enjoys doing independent research and lecturing on all aspects of Masonry. Brother Jeremiah, Thank you for being with us this evening. And the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Brother Bizak. Thank you so much to Rubicon Masonic Society. It's an honor and privilege to be here. I have a PowerPoint, Brother Brian. I'm going to attempt to share it at this time.
Yep. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
And looking good. All right.
Looks good. Looks great.
All right. Thank you. Like I said, thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor and privilege to be here. Brethren, my talk for this evening is titled Notes from the Beehive, Doing the Work in a Best Practice Lodge. When I was approached about giving this talk, I was asked to present an overview of my experience as a relatively new Freemason. I originally was going to call this lecture Nuanced and Complicated in reference to my positions and opinions on various Masonic topics. But I did a great deal of self-reflecting while writing it, and I decided the talk was becoming tedious, boring, and not very optimistic, all of which are antithetical to my actual experience in the fraternity thus far. So the best way to convey my journey, I thought, would be to center it around the vibrant culture of my mother lodge, Broad Ripple number 643 in Indianapolis, Indiana. As the title suggests, I believe Broad Ripple to be what is called a best practice lodge. This talk will show how I have found my place and assumed active roles within it. I will indeed highlight many topical issues in the fraternity, such as Masonic education, progressive officer lines, one-day classes, and the like, while including my opinions and how my lodge approaches these challenges on the whole. With some injected humor and anecdote, I will hopefully provide some insight into my journey as a new Master Mason and inspire some good discussion about lodge culture in general. I'd also like to say thank you to the brothers from my lodge for inspiration. I purposefully left out a lot of specific names, and mainly because there would be so many, and I may have misremembered certain instances and wouldn't want to accidentally misrepresent anyone. But again, thank you, brothers from Broad Ripple number 643. You know who you are. Okay. Petitioning, how I Masonically came to be. Around 2021, 2022, there were several motivating factors as to why I wanted to pursue Freemasonry, which all seemed to coalesce around each other around the same time. I had been looking for ways to become more social after the COVID-19 lockdowns and the subsequent restrictions had been loosened. At the same time, Freemasonry was being referenced in several books I had been reading, and I was intrigued by the esoteric components. This led me to talk with a couple of men at work who I knew to be members, and I began searching for a lodge to visit. I had also been talking about it with my father, who is a Mason. He reminded me that I come from a long line of brothers, and I would become a fifth-generation Indiana Mason should I decide to join. I can't remember the exact chronology of events, but around the same time, he had sent me an article about Joseph Hamilton Davis and the Battle of Tippecanoe from the Indiana Freemason magazine. Dad and I have a mutual interest in the subject. Tippecanoe County is where I grew up. It's local history, of course. The article was written by a Christopher Hodap, past master Broad Ripple Lodge number 643. I decided to look it up, and it turned out that Broad Ripple was the closest lodge to my home, which solidified my decision to reach out and see if this was for me. I believed, like many American men, that the fraternity was more or less a charitable social club with a set of rules or rituals based on some sort of symbolism. The Shriners in their hats and go-karts, old men in aprons and gloves, guys from small towns hosting raffles and spaghetti dinners, and so forth. I'd like to point out there's nothing inherently wrong with these things, that's where I come from, that's my family lineage. And to this day, I have very fond memories of summer fish fries with my grandfather, who was also a Mason, at the park in Mulberry, Indiana. That sense of community was something I was certainly looking for, but I also wanted more than that. I eventually reached out via email through the lodge website and received a phone call. My first phone conversation was with a worshipful brother on the membership committee, and went something like this. Hey, you should come down and have dinner sometime and meet some of the brothers and ask some questions and see what you think. And I, of course, having no idea who Brother Hodap was at the time, I enthusiastically said, "Yeah, I really want to meet this Chris Hodap guy." And past master said, "Well, we'll talk about that. Why don't you come on down in the meantime and have dinner sometime?" Which I eventually did. After talking to some brothers, I was informed that while fellowship and charitable acts are certainly a part of it, Masonry is primarily a system of moral instruction. Aha, I thought, a system of moral instruction. Now I'm interested. And these early interactions and explanations of the craft, while unbeknownst to me at the time, were subtle indications that I was about to join a best practice lodge. So, best practices, what does it mean? This title in respect to Broad Ripple number 643 is solely my description of it. This is not an official title bestowed upon the lodge by the Grand Lodge or any other body. I'm not even sure how many brothers from my lodge would describe it that way. But after being in the fraternity for a couple of years and talking to brothers in my lodge and brothers from around the country, listening to podcasts and YouTube programs and reading countless books, I have come to see my lodge as executing many of the tasks, expectations, and practices that are desirable, demanded, and expected by exemplary brothers of the craft. We are not a traditional observance or European style lodge, but rather we try to make our Blue Lodge the best it can be. We take dress and decorum seriously. We take ritual practice and execution seriously. Our proficiency standards are above our Grand Lodge's expectations, as are the Masonic education presentations at our stated meetings. We take our dinners seriously, and we're known throughout the city for our quality meals. Our lodge is clean, organized, and is constantly being improved upon. To my understanding, our attendance of events by members is also above the median. Our treasury and secretary run tight ships, no hiccups, no problems, constant and open communication. Other lodges visit us to experience our food and fellowship and to observe our degree work. We visit and support other lodges in their degree work. The Indiana Grand Lodge enlists our help with ritual and one-day classes. Yes, things fluctuate a little bit. One past master's dress code may be a little bit more lax than another's. Not every dinner is a 3-star Michelin meal. A brother officer or two might miss a degree or stated meeting due to work or illness, or, things have to shift at the last minute, which can affect the flow of things. Stuff happens. But in general, we'll make it work, and the work will be solid. This was not always the case, as I will get into in a little bit. The Beehive, why and how? As you all probably know, the Beehive is explained in the Master Mason lectures as one of the 9 classes of Masonic emblems. It is a symbol of industry and, quote, recommends the practice of that virtue to all created beings, from the highest seraph in heaven to the lowest reptile of the dust. We should all be industrious creatures, it says, never sitting idly by while fellow creatures are in want or need, and it is within our power to provide relief. A few months after my initiation, I was talking with a past master who explained that many of the brothers identify our lodge with this symbol the most. He said the brothers of our lodge are indeed industrious, always building, serving, and working together for the common good. And like a beehive, Broad Ripple number 643 may not be much to look at from the outside. It's an inconspicuous little box of a building with a sparse-looking parking lot, a little hard to see from the road, and blink and you'll miss it. But there's usually a flurry of activity going on inside. We have weekly events on Thursdays, including stateds, degrees, practices, or some sort of social night. Non-Thursday nights often have brothers practicing ritual in the crossfire or prepping food in the kitchen for the weekly meal. And there always seems to be a trustee around taking care of an issue or an improvement. Always building, always serving. Building means improving the lodge building itself, and of course, improving ourselves as Masons. Serving means literally serving food and acting in service to the lodge, as in servant leadership. Thankfully, the only challenge I have to the Beehive example is our lack of hierarchy, as it should be. There's no queen bee. There's no alpha leader that's going to tear your head off if you do something wrong, except maybe our worshipful brother treasurer. I'm kidding. Joking aside, sure, we have a cohort of past masters that have a certain amount of sway regarding the attitude and direction of the lodge, as they should, in my opinion. But the past masters who still regularly attend, quite a few, I might add, are supportive of new ideas. Indeed, the turn of phrase back in my year is seen absolutely as a cliche in our lodge, and it's openly used as a joke. These PMs hold on to what's important, what makes us great, and what's already been built. But they're not afraid to build upon that and even tear out some deadwood now and again to reinforce the structure. A final thought on the Beehive is a lesson I learned from one of these past masters. He said there are two types of lodges. One has their dining hall laid out like this, and he took out a napkin and he drew several dashed parallel lines to each other and indicating separate tables. He explained the dining hall tables are separated and there are little groups. Some past masters at this table, some of the new guys at this table, potential petitioners at this one, and so forth. He flipped the napkin over and drew a solid rectangle. In the other type of lodge, like ours, the tables are arranged in a circle or rectangle, and everyone sits around the outside. Everyone faces inward, facing each other. Everyone is part of the conversation, and everyone is part of the group. Workers in the Beehive, indeed. Excuse me. Observing the craft, Masons who read. Now, as far as what I've contributed to the Hive, I can proudly say that I'm a Mason who reads. One of the benefits of the COVID lockdown was that I rediscovered my love of reading, so as soon as I joined the fraternity, I immediately began to dig in. From Manly Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages to Kirk McNulty's Signed Secrets and Symbols to Chris Hodap's Solomon Builders, my plate was full at the onset and continues to be. Naturally, I wanted to see who amongst my new brothers were fellow readers and what was on their Masonic menu. To my surprise, we had several readers and quite a few great conversations have been had since then about all-time favorites and current page turners. However, I was and still am more interested in what Masonic material my brothers are excited about. So I set out to see what could be done about getting a discussion group together. The obvious choice would have been to start a book club, but there is always the issue of time. And personally, I was already chairing a monthly Illumination Club, which is a Grand Lodge program designed to study the rules and regulations of the Indiana craft. And I was working in the kitchen as a senior steward, still am, and obviously attending weekly lodge meetings and degrees. So I wondered, do I really need to carve out another group of guys and set another date and time and try to rally brothers to plow through something like morals and dogma? It's a better idea to start small, I thought. Small amount of commitment, small amount of time, small book. So I had recently finished Andrew Hammer's Observing the Craft, which clocks in around 100 pages or so. And I decided I would feel out who was interested and then pass the book along itself like a challenge coin. I immediately found an interested brother, and he was instructed to sign his name on the inside cover when he was done, and to seek out another interested brother to pass it along to. The only request I had is to try and finish it up within a month or so. One brother took it upon himself to start a WhatsApp chat group called Observing the Craft, to which brothers are added upon finishing the book. Currently, we have about 6 to 8 participants, and this seems to have become our de facto book club, the online book club, a virtual space where we post comments about that book or any other Masonic books that we may be reading. And for those that don't know, Observing the Craft is essentially a monograph, a manifesto of sorts that defines, in Brother Hammer's opinion, what are the tenets of an observant lodge. This was indeed a great choice for initial book club book, if I do say so myself. Some of us have noticed some subtle changes in brothers' attitudes, dress, and demeanor since then, since reading it, which we are affectionately calling the Hammer effect. It has yielded some interesting debates and discussion amongst our small group around observant lodges and Masonry in general. Are we an observant lodge? Does Broad Ripple want to be an observant lodge? What does our lodge need to improve on? And is striving to become an observant lodge a path to get there, even if we may never become one nor ever want to become one? I, for one, admire Hammer's willingness to draw the line in the sand on specific issues, especially since these lines arguably don't exist at all or vary by jurisdiction. I believe this 300-plus-year-old fraternity has lessons to teach and that education as such should be considered paramount. Another brother took a different stance after reading the book, and we had a discussion. He believes that Freemasonry should, of course, have rules and structure, but digging in too deep on how things should be can potentially rob brothers of experiences and needs that are already being fulfilled when the lodge itself is a little more malleable. The letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And these are the types of healthy debates that we at Broad Ripple had and continue to have. So, notes from the Beehive. It is in that spirit that I'll quickly draw my own line in the sand on some hot button topics that have been covered more in depth on programs like this, where my lodge stands on these issues and when and why we decide to cross those lines. Masonic education. As you can probably tell by now, I'm a Masonic education advocate at my lodge. I'm the chair of the Masonic Education Committee this year, and I've been responsible for putting together the education programs for our monthly stated meetings, either presenting them myself or scheduling other brothers to present. This has proven to be challenging in certain aspects and quite easy in others. The main challenge is time. As we explained, we're an active lodge with an active schedule, which means an active amount of business, which results in some stated meetings lasting as long as 3 or more hours. So regardless of how I personally feel about it, the current reality is that that educational presentations need to be, and generally are, a concise 15 minutes with another 5 to 10 minutes for discussion. A topic is introduced, a thesis and synopsis is given, often with a handout component, and there is discussion and follow-up questions after. The easy part of this is that there is no shortage of interesting topics or brothers willing to present or create an exercise around said topics. I will say that the discussion and follow-up component tends to be the more rewarding element of these education sessions. The brothers at Broad Ripple are genuinely interested and excited about the topics discussed and want to engage. I'd also like to add, in regards to finding educational topics, my attitude is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Basically, there's an endless amount of quality material out there. One doesn't need to be a master researcher to put together something that brothers of your lodge will find engaging. Educational programs like Rubicon are a great place to start. Just by listening regularly or picking up the transactions book, or Brother Bizak's Bending Granite, for example. You can always find something interesting and worthwhile. Even if you don't have much time slotted for education in your meetings, cite the authors, of course, but just pull out a paragraph or two from a longer lecture and present it and see what happens. It's worked pretty well for me. And if I keep things up, I'm going to have to start paying royalties to John Bizak and Dan Campbell. Membership push, or Grand Lodge's membership push. So, quick thought on this topic. I sympathize with brothers around the country that are tired of the doom and gloom messages that we constantly get from many Grand Lodges as to low membership rolls and how the main focus needs to be on new petitioners. However, after reflecting on this over the last year or so, I realize that I probably will ultimately be doing the same thing, if I'm being honest. If I was a member of Grand Lodge and was visiting a local lodge or speaking at an event and I had time to just get one point across, that would probably be it. Grand Lodges basically have a business to run, as Brother Dan pointed out recently on this program. And like Brother Kimball, I'd say the change I would like to see the most, and a realistic one, is Grand Lodges in general just broaden their scope a little bit when it comes to education. And that being said, I think Indiana's headed in the right direction. There's several quality events throughout the year, all over the state, all geared towards education that have Grand Lodge support and representation. So from my vantage point, it looks like that trend is going to continue. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay. The Blue Lodge pipeline. So back to observing the craft. I agree with Brother Hammer that we must never lose sight of the Blue Lodge holding the most important set of degrees. And those that treat craft lodges as merely a gateway to appended bodies are sadly missing the point. I was surprised to learn that Broad Ripple was for many years very hive-like indeed, keeping to itself and focusing on the internal tasks at hand. Some brothers joined the York or Scottish Rite, of course, but basically members didn't really visit other lodges or make an effort to participate much outside of the lodge. I'm happy to say that attitude has changed somewhat. Today, we have liaisons to other lodges to help with ritual, and groups of brothers have dual memberships, and groups of guys frequently visit other lodges for assistance and present educational lectures or to simply just show support. However, it's an interesting tale of our lodge culture as to perhaps why this used to be. Apparently, a hemorrhaging of membership and attendance due to appendant body affiliation used to be an issue some decades ago, and in fact has made its way into an old Broad Ripple legend. The story goes that we had a rodent problem in the kitchen, a mouse that frustratingly wouldn't go away. A trustee at the time eventually stood up at a stated meeting and said, "I finally solved the mouse problem in the kitchen." The brother said, "Great, how'd you do that?" Trustee smiled and said, "Well, I handed him a petition to the Scottish Rite, York Rite, and the Shriners. Haven't seen him since." One-day classes. So to tie into that story, another reason the Beehive may have been so insular was that we were in the state of rebuilding, and focusing solely on our lodge is what was prescribed to the brothers as the best thing to do. So about 25 odd years ago, Broad Ripple was in dire straits in terms of membership and proficiency, and from what I understand, was in jeopardy of having its charter revoked. A Grand Lodge officer who was a member of Broad Ripple took it upon himself to recruit and encourage a group of men to reboot it, so to speak. Several of these men went through one-day classes to become Master Masons and did just that. One of those brothers is a man you all probably know as Chris Hodap. Now, personally, if there's a line drawn in the sand, I'm completely against the concept of one-day classes for multiple reasons. However, without a program like this, it is possible that the fraternity might not have the works of Brother Hodap, and I might not have a lodge. Now, maybe I'm being a bit dramatic, but I think you take my point. Another recent example is we had an enthusiastic brother who received his EA, but his personal life was interfering with his degree scheduling as he is the full-time caretaker of an adult with special needs. And we accommodated him using this program. Again, I'm not for it in general because it can potentially rob a brother of the full experience and can lead to the practice of lazily pushing men through just to boost the rolls. But this brother is literally doing the Lord's work, in my opinion, and I'm happy to have him as a dues-paying member who actively participates and engages in discussion when time allows him to attend lodge. I think if there is to be a program like this in place, then cases like this are what it should be used for. I was pleased to hear a similar sentiment from a Grand Lodge representative at a recent education event put on by a local York Rite chapter. In essence, he said this program is there to accommodate special cases, like a graveyard shift paramedic or a police officer with an ever-changing schedule. Good men who want to join but can't take the degrees on a specific lodge's specific timetable. This is not to chunk out a bunch of new guys quickly just to say we're successful at making Masons. So my current attitude towards one-day classes is if we're going to do it, let's do it right and do it for the right reasons. Progressive lines. Another topic that is often discussed is the so-called progressive officer line. This, of course, is the idea that the line of officers moves in a progressive fashion, i.e. the senior deacon one year becomes the junior warden the next year and the senior warden the next year and so forth. The main arguments against this practice are the fact that the Constitutions of Masonry itself says that officers are to be chosen based on merit. And there is a tendency for some lodges to essentially phone it in when it comes to choosing their leadership. And I agree, merit is the way to go. However, how does one earn merit in a lodge? In my opinion, one really good way is a well-curated progressive line, which is what we practice at Broad Ripple. A brother gets in line, so to speak, and is held accountable to a standard of performance and then moves upward or progresses based on that performance. So, personally, I want my worshipful master to have spent some time in the kitchen. I want my senior warden to have given the middle chamber as the senior deacon and so on. A brother can be voted out, another can be moved ahead if necessary. Hypothetically, say the junior deacon consistently fails at his duties despite counseling and training, he can be removed or surpassed. Likewise, if a lodge is in desperate need of direction or has money problems, for example, and a past master transfers in, say, who has experience in turning around a struggling lodge, there's absolutely no reason that he cannot be voted in as worshipful for a year and see if he can right the ship. In general, however, when held accountable and to a high standard, it is my opinion that a progressive line can be a great way for brothers to earn merit while allowing for a lodge to have at least a snapshot of forthcoming leadership, which helps greatly with planning and goal setting. And really quick, I wanted to say something, cash on hand. I want to say something quickly about finances. And I've noticed many of the struggling lodges out there struggle because of lack of consistent funding. Many of the positive things we do at my lodge are a direct result of being financially stable. We once had a grand old lodge building, but now we are in a modest 1960s office type building. It's not much to look at, but it suits our needs and facilitates our work. There was a decision made decades ago to sell the old lodge building to cut overhead and monumental future costs. But we retained a small parking lot adjacent to it and continue to rent a storefront, which modestly contributes to our monthly income. This enables us to have a little bit extra money to put on a festa board or put together a family event, for example, without having to stress too much. Again, we also have a fantastic treasurer who keeps everything in order with an extensive and detailed yearly budget plan. I understand it's easier said than done, but I felt I would be remiss if I didn't advocate for practices like regularly raising your dues, finding a supplemental revenue stream, and making those hard decisions about property. As we at Broad Ripple have personally reaped the benefits as a result of past Broad Ripple brothers making those hard decisions. And finally, you get out of it what you put into it. I've heard it said in personal discussions and on Masonic podcasts and such that this turn of phrase rubs some brothers the wrong way, and I understand why. This is because many that seek Masonic light often come away from a lodge experience underwhelmed or dissatisfied. You get out of it what you put into it is often given by a more established member of that lodge as a cop-out or a platitude, implying that the inquisitive brother needs to perhaps read more on his own or find his own way of fitting in somehow. This is obviously a triggering phrase to some because it is the belief, and the correct belief, in my opinion, that it is on the lodge to be providing value to the brother, not necessarily the other way around. That being said, it is a personal goal of mine to kind of take this phrase back and make sure that it remains something positive. Because to me, that phrase is saying the same thing as life is what you make it, or the Lord helps those who helps themselves. Lodges and their leadership should be held accountable for not providing value, for sure. A brother should explore other types of lodges and Masonic experiences if he is not finding what he's looking for. Absolutely. But I'm imploring other Masons to put yourself out there, other new Masons to put yourself out there and do everything in your power to meet your lodge and your brothers at least halfway. I've had ideas that I've put forth. Some have been tried before and didn't work for multiple reasons. Some were being worked on already, unbeknownst to me, and some have been taken seriously, discussed, and are now in the process of implementation. The point is that nothing happens without interjecting yourself. Even a best practices lodge or traditional observance lodge can't be everything to everyone all the time. Lodges need new ideas, fresh meat, new blood, even if they don't know it. You might be surprised what you can accomplish when you propose something new, or better yet, just do it yourself. Do something for your lodge that you want to see done, what you want to be a part of your experience, and hopefully it will come back to you. You'll get something out of it, and the lodge will get something out of it too. If everyone has the same attitude, you'll generate a positive feedback loop, and the culture of your lodge will improve overall. So in conclusion, I'd have to say the most important thing about my experience at this best practice lodge we call the Beehive is that I've never been shut down. I can't stress enough how much this has meant to me and my growth and participation as a Mason. I'm sure it's been tempting to want to say to me a couple of times, man, will you shut up for like 5 minutes? But it hasn't happened yet. As a reader, as someone who's into the esoteric, and as someone who sees Masonic education as paramount, I've never been told we don't do that here, or that's not what this lodge is about. This is because it is not in our culture to do so. It is in our culture to say, hey, maybe we can try that. Or that's interesting. I see your passion. Knock yourself out. Or more often than not, I hear, hey, that's a cool idea. I can help you with that. Broad Ripple has challenges like any lodge, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly challenges that have to be met with clear planning and proper execution, which, as I often say, is more often than not easier said than done. But with a firm and steadfast resolution, we'll build on it as best we can. And hopefully this talk will inspire others to do the same. Thank you all for listening. Thanks again to my lodge brothers. Brother Evans, I'll turn this back to you and I'll be happy to discuss anything you like.
Great. Thank you, Brother Jeremiah. Appreciate it very much. Let me take the screen back. Okay. All right.
Excellent.
Can you see my screen now?
I can.
Okay, perfect. First of all, I want to thank you very much, brother. You put a lot of time and energy and effort into that. So we thank you for doing that. How long have you been a Master Mason now?
Master Mason last spring, May 4th, 2023, I think.
Okay, so you were very recently raised. How long did it take you to go through the degree process?
A year and a half.
Okay.
I think I started, it was complicated because COVID was still kind of going on and off. And so I started coming around to lodge, and then there was like the Delta surge and stuff. And then so I think I became an EA in beginning of 22,
Okay.
end of 21, beginning of 22, and then a fellow craft 6 months later, maybe, and then MM 8 months later, something like that. Another
Okay.
6 months, something like that.
Okay, great. Yeah, my questions are kind of broad on that level. Let me go back a moment. Brothers, if you guys are interested in asking any questions, this would be the time to do it. The floor is open for discussion. You're welcome to submit your question in the chat, speak up if and when appropriate, or there's this virtual hand that you can raise, and we'll be happy to call on you that way as well. So did you actually go through your degrees with other men in class format?
Sorry, I'm not
What
sure
was
what
the
you mean.
process in between each degree? Obviously memorization.
Oh, yeah. So, petition got accepted, was assigned a mentor, took my EA, and we would, basically you have to learn and understand the crossfire, the catechism. So you have to learn the EA catechism and be able to explain it and grip word and step, and then the mentor presents it once he believes you're ready to move on, then he presents it in front of the lodge, and you're kind of quizzed by a different mentor, like a different past master.
Sure.
As far as proficiency, then so when two people say, yeah, he's good,
Okay.
then they'll schedule the other thing and the next degree and so forth.
So is one mentor assigned to one brother, or do you go through that process, that learning process with other men in the same degree? So, for
No,
example, at
one
Lexington,
mentor.
we usually typically we try to have a class, so more than one man is going through that process together. I'm just curious what your process was with that.
Yeah, it's one
It
on
is.
one. We don't. We're still like a pretty small lodge, I would say. So it's not like we may have two guys come through at the same time, but
Right.
each person generally has his own mentor
Okay, gotcha. Perfect. That's what
and
I'm.
works on proficiency at his own pace,
Gotcha.
basically.
How many men are in Broad Ripple? How many brothers do you have there?
I think it's around 100,
Okay,
like 110 like dues paying
sure.
members, and I would say a regular meetings are meetings and degrees, any 15 to 30 people
Okay.
will show
Yep.
up.
Yep. No, that's so you went through a lot of topics here. And
Yeah.
a lot of different topics. Each one could certainly be its own presentation easily. What are you when you put this together? Who did you envision in your mind watching this aside from Rubicon members, and what were you hoping that they would get away from this? Because there is a lot of really good information, a lot of very important topics. If you could sum it all up, what's the message ultimately that you're trying or would like to try to convey with this presentation, aside from just your personal experience?
Probably that last part. Like I just want to encourage new Masons to put yourself out there. And if you're not satisfied with something, make it happen. And if you're hitting a brick wall with the lodge that you happen to join, there's nothing wrong with finding another lodge. But um, yeah, just I've been able to come into this fraternity and get excited and passionate about all different kinds of things for all different kinds of reasons. And uh, it might just be me getting older. I don't know. I used to not think this way, but like, yeah, just reaching out, say, hey, can we do this? No, why not? Well, because we don't have money or we're too busy or whatever. Like, okay, well, what if I do it? If I do it, can we do this? Yeah, sure, you can do it. Okay, cool. Like, it's there's a having taking initiative, volunteering, taking initiative, putting yourself out there. And I think that the vast majority of the brothers at my lodge, that's what they do. And that's why I decided to put the lecture together that way. And that's why, like I said, I kind of wrote it as kind of like, I'm a new Mason and I have all these different ideas about all these different topics and whatever. And it was just getting like tedious and boring. And I was like, you know what? Like I'm having a great time and learning a lot of stuff. And I really like my lodge and I really like my brothers and I really like what we're doing. I should just talk about that.
Yeah.
And maybe some other folks will get excited about it or, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, that's exactly the answer that I was looking for. I think that's a excellent answer. Um, I know we have some other brothers on here that have some thoughts and questions. So if you do, please, this would be a good time to bring them up. Um, Brother Crickard, I'm going to call on you if you don't mind for a minute, brother. You are maybe a couple years more seasoned in our lodge than Brother Jeremiah in his lodge. What comparisons or similarities or thoughts do you have after hearing his presentation that you can relate with? Just curious.
Hello, brother. Thank you for that presentation. That was it was a good presentation. So, Brian, can you rephrase your question? I'm having trouble putting something in my head right
Yeah,
now.
I guess my question is, so you were raised a master mason maybe a few years. Uh, longer than Jeremiah. So you've been a Master Mason a little bit longer, I guess. But I'd still see you guys as very similar, maybe in your journey of Masonry. I'm just curious if there was anything that he mentioned that kind of stood out to you regarding some of the uh, some of the topics that he discussed regarding education, maybe one-day classes, progressive lines, stuff like that. Was there anything that you could find similarities with
Well,
Lexington?
I don't want to say similarities. I guess something I was disagreeing with was the 1 day Masonic classes, and you know, he brought up some good reasons why to do it, but I think it's more important to, in my opinion, to instead of doing a 1 day course just to get them in, regardless of what their life circumstance is, it's uh, like we ask people at Lexington Lodge One, it's uh, hey, if we lay out what we expect, and if for some reason a man can't you know give what we expect, or we can't give him what he expects, it's like, hey, come back at a later time when you have more time, whatever that may look like. It's uh, uh if it works for them, cool, but I don't think it would work at our lodge. I shouldn't say I don't think it'd work at our lodge. I think it's a little I will call it cheating, just for
Yeah,
lack of
it's certainly it's a unique
yeah.
way to go through. Is there anybody here that has, thank you, David. Is there anybody on that has gone through a one-day class?
I have not
Because
gone through one, Brian, but I was a part of one.
right.
I did as an officer in one. And I saw them used a couple of years ago. They were used pretty aggressively in Ohio.
Mhm.
And I think the point is well made that there are some circumstances where perhaps there's a need for it, but it seemed to me that they expanded to the point that they were being used for convenience in a way that I didn't think was really necessary. I I I don't want to be too harsh on them. I'm not completely against them, but I'm very skeptical of them, I suppose. And the reason, like the point about Chris Hodap is an excellent point. And that particular year, our Grand Master in Ohio had gone through as a 1 day Mason in the early 80s, and he obviously had done very well. He was Grand Master of Ohio. So I mean, obviously, good men go through,
Yeah.
and good men stick around in the fraternity, but that doesn't mean that they don't lose something by going through the process. There's a payoff. There's a price to be paid by going through that very abbreviated structure, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And it's not the fault of the man going through. He doesn't know what is before him. He doesn't know what he's giving up. Um, and by the time he does, he's down the road. It's behind him at that point. So I don't think they're entirely fair to the men coming in my opinion. I'll just leave it at that.
No, that's a great comment, and that's a really good perspective because you have to think about whose perspective you're taking on the one-day class. Is it the perspective of the petitioner, or is it the perspective of the lodge or the Grand Lodge or the craft itself? Is the craft itself being cheated because we're brothers are going through that maybe aren't qualified correctly to go through? But the other perspective, which you mentioned, which frankly I didn't think about right away, was we're could be cheating the men going through of the actual genuine sincerity and solemnity of the process of becoming EA fellow craft master mason. It's a journey, and it's a beautiful journey when done with sincerity. So yeah, there's definitely two sides of that. So I don't think that we should, I'm talking to myself, look at it as though it's a decision that affects me and my lodge only. It really is a decision that affects the men who are knocking at the door just as much,
Brian,
if not
I just
more.
want to ask one more question. It's like, so for every Chris Hodap we get, how many other just like drones, how many thousands, if not tens of thousands of drones do we get for like one, uh, you know,
Hmm.
worker bee?
Sure. Jeremiah, do you have any stats on the 1 day classes? And this is a presentation all in of itself. So, but do you have any stats
Yeah,
in your state?
no, I don't. I
I don't have
I
anything I
don't.
can cite immediately. I apologize for talking over you, but I just wanted to say that at the time that they were doing them so aggressively in Ohio, we were told that the retention rate was actually very similar to
Really?
just the normal process. But I'm not sure that's the bar we want to shoot for anyways.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah,
Yeah, and
we
like,
could go ahead, Jeremiah. I'm sorry.
sorry, that I've heard the same. I don't know in Indiana specifically how much research has been done on like stats, but I've heard the same from different states that the retention rate's about the same. And again, I didn't I try to take, so I watch a show all the time, or the program all the time, and I just tried to pick out a bunch of different, hot button issues that come up a lot. And I know that but like I said, I agree. If there's a line in the sand, if it's up to Jeremiah 1 day classes or not, I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
But I'm in a situation where our Grand Lodge is doing them at once every couple of months or whatever it is, once a quarter or whatever. And they ask our lodge to help because we're good at ritual. And if we're going to do it, like, like I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to do it for the right reason. And we don't. And that was my other point, was just that even Grand, like the attitude generally seems to be like, this is not what happened in Ohio. This is a random thing that you need. If this is like I said, I'm against it, but the Grand Lodge is doing it and they ask us for help. So I've seen it help people that I, care about. So I'm like, I'm not going to fight it too much, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm against it, but
Right.
we're doing it. So I'm going to help do it the best it can be done.
I think we could probably all say that there's certain things we agree and don't agree with, but we have each of us a constitution that we have to abide by and stick with. And that's ultimately what should guide our decisions and what we do. One more thought is when I think of the 1 day class, I can't help but think from the host perspective that the ultimate goal is just to get new members, which is disheartening from that side of it, is financial and just quantity over quality. Every now and then we get a HODAP though. The question though would be, would he have not gone through had it not been other options? So I'd be curious to know what he would say about that.
Ask him. He's
Yeah.
pretty, I wouldn't have brought it up if he hasn't.
Yeah.
He's brought it up multiple times. He's very open about it. So
Yeah. I've heard him talk about it too. All right, let's turn the page unless it comes back up in another question. Brother Donald, good to see you. Go ahead.
Thank you. First, Brother Jeremiah, I deeply enjoyed your presentation. As you were going through it, it was sort of reminiscing about my own lodge's transition to an observant lodge over the last 2.5 years. So some of the challenges we went through are some of those that you've talked about tonight. Two topics I want to talk on is progressive lines. In our lodge, we have an unofficial progressive line in the sense that it's based on merit. So if you're junior warden, before you go to the chair of the senior warden, you have to show that you've performed the duties of the junior warden at a very high level. You've done the proper charges that are part of the junior warden's workload, and then you've given the opportunity to go to the senior warden chair. But it is based on merit, but to a certain extent, we always offer it to the officer if he's proven himself in the previous chair. And that way we kind of like train those that are coming in after us to see if they're able to progress. So that's one point. The 1 day classes, obviously, where I'm from is here in Montreal, Canada. We don't have 1 day classes for actually, I don't think there's anywhere in my jurisdiction that they have 1 day classes. But I've often engaged in conversations about that. And it's, I mean, I've seen in many lodges where they've initiated brethren for the same purpose as probably one-day classes were created to just boost the numbers in the lodge. So they're not applying any other special criteria or selection process other than you would at a one-day class. And in some cases, brethren would be passed from one month to the next. So initiated in January, passed in February, and then raised in April. And the only reason it's not in March is because there's only 28 days in February, and we have a requirement for 30 days between degrees. So you can see that unless you're really intensively working on your Masonic education between those degrees, I don't know how much more you would get than if you did a one-day class. So I really think it's sort of relative to how much you engage in the process of learning each degree and the symbolism and allegory that are associated with that degree before moving on to the next.
Yeah. Agreed.
Thank you.
I didn't exactly know how to explain the progressive line, but like that's what we do. Like the line moves forward, but you have to earn your spot. It's not just like, oh, Bob was the senior deacon last year, so he's automatically the junior warden the next year. I think that's where people have a real problem with the progressive line. Because a lot of lodges do that, unfortunately. But yeah, ours is similar to exactly what you just described. Like it's merit, but you don't get to move forward unless you have met the standards and expectations, and there's duties and expectations for every office, and all of those criteria have to be met pretty much before generally speaking. So
we're although Masons, we're still humans, and we have this tendency to want to get to the top. But really, in Masonry, there shouldn't be a race to the top. Like you said, each role is extremely important, and each role is required to open and close lodge depending on the degree. If I had a choice, I would have preferred to have taken more time to become master of the lodge. And I bet you a lot of people would probably say that. So I don't think that there needs to be a rush. It needs to be who is best suited for that role at that particular time. Circumstances change. It shouldn't upset brothers because they didn't ascend to the next chair. It should be no hard feelings when done appropriately and professionally, in my opinion. So with that being said, if anybody's interested, we're looking for an opening for Rubicon chairman. Be happy to. Just kidding. Maybe not. Message me outside. No. Brother David. Go ahead. David Dutcher. Go ahead. You're muted, brother. Don't make the same mistakes I do.
Thank you. Yeah, I think do that every time. Thank you a lot for having me. It's been a while since I've had a Monday night free, so I'm glad I was able to join you guys tonight. Wasn't my original intention when I put my hand up, but I'll throw my voice in the ring on the one-day class. We were talking about the one-day classes in Ohio that came through a few years ago, and I was a district education officer and a district deputy during that time, so I was definitely involved in that process. And I'm not a fan of them. I won't reiterate all the points that have already been made. I don't think they're the best way to go. But the comment I would make, I guess, as a kind of a voice of opposition, if you will, is that I think we could probably make a list of just as many men who went through a traditional way who didn't engage as we would hope.
Sure.
And so whether those people went through in a one day or they went through in a traditional method, the result may still be the same. So, I guess the comment that I would make, or kind of the way I've been swayed, is that it's more about the man than the method. And if you know of a Mason who came through by a one-day class and you're concerned about him, rather than complaining about the fact that he came through a one-day class, take him under your wing, teach him what it means to be a Mason, and help him learn what the right method is rather than worrying about how he got there. And likewise, if you see someone who came by through a traditional method that's not engaging, we have that obligation. We have taken that obligation to help one another. So, that's kind of my 2 cents, if you will, on the 1 day class. Kind of related to that was my question. Brother Beaver, I was curious, if I did my math correctly, it's been about 3 years, so maybe not quite 3 years since you were initiated. How many in your lodge?
Yeah.
Okay, in your lodge, how many other men have come through and been raised in that time? And how would you gauge their engagement in masonry and in the lodge compared to yourself?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8, probably, maybe 10. I'm sorry, my memory is
That's
not
fine. Yeah,
super great.
six to
But
10.
I
That's,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know how to say. I I'm definitely one of the more involved people, I would say. But I mean, we've got uh I mean, I'm doing a lot. Like I'm an officer and I'm doing Masonic education and I'm doing all this stuff. So we have, and then the other, let's say 6 or 8 guys that have come in, um, it's all of a varying to a varying degree. So one brother um came in and was kind of on a similar schedule that I was, maybe about a year and change, did his, got raised. And but he was a young guy, so he got a job, like he moved to Boston or something, right? So he's not around anymore because he was young and got his degrees and then he got a job and he's not here. So then there's another guy who is around all the time and he's super helpful and he'll help in the kitchen and uh absolutely great brother, become a close friend of mine at this point, but hasn't. Oh, he reads. Oh, he's watched uh, the lecture from the Rubicon Summit from last year, that Joseph Ford Newton, and so he went out. He's read McBride now, and he's read Joseph Ford Newton, so he's super into it and well read and all that stuff. But he's not. Because of kids and commitment with scouts and other things, he's not an officer. So he didn't get in line and he's not um, doing anything extra like lectures and such. But he attends regularly and he's super engaged and knowledgeable, and maybe that'll be something down the road, right? So it's a varying degree on all the guys that have come in the last year and a half or 2 years, I would say.
Isn't that ultimately though what we're after? We're after the same goal, just how you get there, right? We want someone and we want men to engage, to participate. Don't just do this for the sake of doing this for a degree or a ring or whatever, credentials. Do this because you want to participate in the journey alongside of us. I think that's really what we're after, whether that's a 1 day degree person or a year and a half process to become a master mason or someone in the progressive line. Again, it's the beehive, right? That's the nature of your whole presentation, is the beehive, and we all work together. So,
And to your point there, Brother Evans, I've used the phrase myself many times, but you use the comment that, being on the journey. And I think what we often need to remind ourselves is that not everybody's journey is the same. It doesn't mean that it's lesser or more. It's just that it's different. And I think that's, a large part of what we have to keep in mind is help each other along the journey, but don't expect them necessarily to follow footstep for footstep.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother David. Good to see you. Brother Bruce.
Thank you. Um, totally enjoyed your message, brother. And again, I am one of the Ohio 1 day class members from the first time it happened in 2002. couple more years and I'll get my 25-year pin, and I am a past master. I've felt good and bad about it at times. I have tried to help my lodge when I can. What I have found out is that we have a couple solid families that have been historic in our lodge, and unfortunately not having a connection through family to the lodge has been good and bad. Also, I'm kind of outspoken at times and voice my opinions, and maybe that's gotten me in trouble. But a couple years ago, or two years ago, I guess, a brother who is my dentist, I asked him and gave him the papers, and he did petition our lodge and came in and worked his way up. And I thought he would have me be the chaplain when he was master 2 years ago. And instead he asked me to be the Masonic education or lodge education officer, and I agreed to that. And it is, in talking to him, I think it was a good choice, because it's used to be that our LEO talk lasted about 5 minutes, and now the brothers are accepting when I read something, when I give them a little bit longer message that maybe makes them think. I haven't had a lot of comments back, but I now get at least an applause when I'm done, that I guess they have enjoyed what I picked for a course. So the one set of books that I would recommend, that I did not see our brother recommend, and Brother Kimball introduced me to them, is from Temple Publishers in Washington, D.C., the Carl Claudy Introduction to Freemasonry, and they are still in print. I don't know what number it is now, but I want to say they're very reasonable for the set of three books. I think it's around $30 or so. But I would highly recommend those books to anybody, because it's a great introduction to each degree, and even learned a few things that I didn't know before in that. So, would I do a one-day class again? I don't know. We were down in the one arena down in Cincinnati, and I think totally for the whole day of joining Blue Lodge, there were like 1,700 plus of us. And then they also did Scottish Rite that day. I think it would have helped if my dad had been a more active Mason at the time, but he wasn't. So I had to keep turning to my brother-in-law, my brother's father-in-law, who was very active, and ask him for some things. And he did help me initially get involved. Well,
you're an anomaly, Bruce, just like Chris Hodep. You're an anomaly.
Well, I think that's the thing, is it was an introduction, and I think for my lodge there were about 12 people, and I think there are 2 or 3 of us left, and they faded out or moved to different things. And unfortunately, it's like my dentist who got involved. Right now, he's got a 6-year-old son, I think 6 or 7-year-old son, and he's working with him on football, and he's the coach. So he can't attend sometimes. And that, especially like last Saturday, we did 2 MMs to get our requirement in, because things happen.
Yeah.
Health problems for some of our members have bumped people out of the line and others back in. And fortunately, we do have a a good set of past masters, but unfortunately, even right now, our secretary we're having to ask him to step into the shoes of being a emeritus secretary because he's getting forgetful. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate it. Brother Jared. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeremiah. Go ahead. You want to respond?
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that those Claudia books were introduced to me as well by another someone I consider a mentor, and they are fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd like to second that.
Brother Jero, go ahead.
Yeah. I too am among those who think that that the 1-day classes are not good. I do think though that Brother Crickard's point is really primary though. What's really important is the man himself. And I think that's demonstrated by you, Brother Jeremy. I think whether you had them with the classes or gone through the normal way, a young man with your attitude toward taking things and going with them, however you can get that kind of person into the fraternity, it's a credit to it. But if you had come in that way, I think you would agree you would have missed a lot. But the interest that you are following though is they are directly the right path. I wanted to comment particularly on the thing about the progressive line. I think that the worst feature of the progressive line, and we're dealing with that at my lodge in South Pasadena, is one term. We do a progressive line, at least the top 4 officers, but we're trying to introduce the idea of, and this comes out of observant Freemasonry, and we are an observant lodge, so self-declared and registered with the MRF and so on. But if you think about it, when you go into one of those top 4 offices, that's where you start having to be qualified by your district inspector or whatever you call them. And so you move into a new job. It has new responsibilities. And you've had to learn the ritual to be able to qualify to take that position. And then if it's a 1-year term, while you're trying to really get good at your ritual you've already learned and really understand how to perform correctly and fully in the office you've undertaken, you're also stuck with having to start studying to go to the next office. So we're trying to convince our lodge, and we're having a good deal of pushback, having the expectation be 2 years so that you aren't immediately conflicted with all of this stuff at one time, all of this memory work at one time, and you get to do the ritual more times, and I think that the biggest impact there is on the quality of the ritual. And I also think that one of the most important things in Freemasonry is about taking your time. Anytime you get in a hurry in Freemasonry, you're going to miss things. You need not just to hear the ritual or even memorize the ritual, but you've got to do these extra things, the kind of things that you're doing, Brother Jeremiah, the study, and to that I would add some kind of contemplative practices as well, because I think that that's essential to really get the most out of it. But we should be taking our time, and also a lot of people that rush right up to in their fourth, fifth year in the lodge, they're the master. They often have a thing in their lodge where after that they give you a life membership, so you're no longer paying dues. A lot of lodges that I've experienced, those masters disappear. They go off into the other rites or things like that. When we were debating this thing about going to 2-year terms, one of the people that was against it said, I would like to be the master, but gee, 3 years, that's quite a commitment. If you're doing that, that's 6 years. Oh my goodness. And I said, well, actually, if you count senior deacon, it's 8 years. Where are you going? If you're not willing to commit to your lodge for another 8 years, I don't know why you need to be the master of the lodge, which comes in the only other point that everybody should have a turn. I think that that's a bad idea too. You should be becoming the master of the lodge because you want to serve the lodge, not because you want to have that as an achievement or a line on your Masonic biography. I think Brother Jeremiah, I see you taking your turn. I see you taking your time, and I see you having a great Masonic experience ahead of you. But it's your dedication and your deep interest that's really the thing. And when we see young men or even older men that have that attitude, that's who we need in the fraternity, regardless of numbers. What we really need the most is the quality. And I really thank you for your talk. I found it very interesting. I even find it interesting that if there is a more industrious team player in nature than the bee, it's got to be the beaver. So you're qualified. Coming in.
Gerald, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard you say.
Yeah, well, it came to me while he was speaking, but
see, Masons can laugh. We're good.
yeah.
Gerald,
No,
thank you.
I think that your attitude, Brother Jeremiah, is seeing what is actual there, seeing what is practical to be able to get done. You pick up your tools and start working on doing it. And you doing that inspires others to follow your lead. And that's the kind of men we're trying to make in Masonry. And I think that the ones that really do the best at it, they were Masons in their heart before they ever took the degrees.
Yeah.
But take your time, everybody, and try to help everybody else take their time. There's no hurry. The older I get, the less hurry I'm in. Now that may be because I can see the other door just over the horizon, but I think that it is true, and I think it's one of the most important things to take your time to go deep. If you stay on the porch and don't go in and fully experience it, that's when you're really missing out. No matter how long you're a Mason or how high you climb in any of the hierarchies within Mason.
Well said.
Understanding it truly, that's what it's about.
Words of wisdom, Gerald. Thank you very much. Good.
I always hope that's going to be the way it comes out, Brother Brian.
Well, we'll take it that way. We'll make it work. Brothers, we are running short on time. We have time for three more. Mario, you're first, and then I have two more questions that have come in the meeting chat direct as well. So, Mario, good to see you, brother. Go ahead.
Good to see you, Brian. Thank you very much for taking for giving me a chance. And Brother Jeremiah, I want to congratulate you on what you're doing. You're a young Mason and you're starting really strong. I really commend you for that. I just want to bring to mind that also Freemasonry is for life. Freemasonry is something that you want to do until the day you are wearing that apron, not on you, but over you, on top of you. And you know, I do believe that there is some good in one-day classes, but they do have to come with a very strong program, to fully integrate what you received in one day and fully extend it, because you can be a an enter apprentice for, I don't know, 1 year maybe, and you'll be just reading from the monitor, and it has enough material to keep you there for a year. But being a Mason is a more. It's about more. Um, I always try to think about Freemasonry in terms of the first thing that we come here to do, which is to learn, and you never stop learning. So it doesn't matter how far down you go or how strong you go at the beginning, you will always have something more to learn. And it's good because, like, right now I see you, and I see a lot of myself in you, in the sense that you're looking for books, you're reading books, you're trying to show what you have discovered. And it's fascinating. I do that myself. It's like I find a very good book and I try to give it to someone, and hey, what do you think? And well, I don't have that many friends that read as much as I do, but uh that is my thing, and I share that with you. But at the same time, there are brothers who don't read as much. But if we share time, if we share, if we sort of invite them to this side of the, let's read along, let's just discuss about things. That's the main reason why I'm always trying to be next to the Rubicon Masonic Society guys, because they're fascinating in the sense that they always have some topic that I'm like, I probably would have never thought about or heard about if it wasn't for them. So I absolutely uh, love that, and I'm always going to be there whenever there's one another or any activity that they put on, because they're great. But at the same time, it's a long run. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And at the same time, it is worthwhile to read as much as you can and discuss with friends, because sometimes you may be reading from the wrong places. But it's good, it's good. I commend you for that. I congratulate you and I pat you on the back, and at the same time, I'm pushing you a little bit because it's tough. You're gonna find some resistance, but we got to keep going, brother. So, um, thank you, thank you so much for sharing what you have found in your short time, but it's been very productive. So, good, awesome work, and thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Brother Mario. Well said. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to
Um,
see you, Brian.
we're gonna pivot a moment. Just got a message from Broad Ripple Lodge, and they want to roast Brother Jeremiah. I mean, they want to pitch in on some of what Jeremiah said. So, brothers from Broad Ripple Lodge, please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours. Don't beat up on him too bad. He did good.
Yeah, he gets enough of that from us on Thursday night.
I
So hopefully
figured.
you all can hear me, brothers.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Arlie Hartman, past master of Broad Ripple Lodge in 2018. I joined Broad Ripple in 2010. And Jeremiah has been told the tales from all us old past masters about how much the lodge has changed, even in that short 15-year span. We have a long tradition here of about over 150 years of masonry. And while we have a progressive line that is merit-based, I believe, we've rarely repeated masters. I think a handful of times, maybe 3 times, we've had masters go back through the line. And it's a tradition we're very proud of here. We feel like we prepare young men through not only the lectures and the moral instruction, but then also in the roll up your sleeves and take care of a lodge and build it, right? Not only from its very physical mercantile needs, but also what makes a lodge, which are its members. And one thing that truly that I appreciate Jeremiah coming in our lodge and introducing things was we didn't have the idea of having a book club or talking about these great authors or getting exposed to things like the Rubicon Association, the Rubicon Masonic Society, and these talks. So it's been very valuable, I think, for even old past masters like myself, right, to be able to get that new blood in here and really kind of move the pendulum of us being an insular lodge. It was really concerned about keeping the lights on and making sure that we have a meal for our brothers every week to truly getting out and participating in masonry in a larger standpoint. So I'd like to thank Brother Beaver for all he's given our lodge in the short amount of time he's been here. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much for those comments. Tell everyone at Broad Ripple hello. We appreciate you guys joining us. All right, we're going to pivot one more time. We had a message just come in from David Daughtry, and you can read his comment in the chat. And I'd like to see if Worship Brother Alan Martin wouldn't mind responding to that, since our lodge has kind of, I don't want to say adopted, but transitioned a little bit into the consecutive year role for Worshipful Master of the Lodge. So any comments, any advice, Worship Brother Alan, that you would possibly have for our brother regarding this topic? Putting you on the spot. Sorry about that.
Well, I'm reading this comment here. Just a second here.
And maybe, Brother David, if you want to just kind of recap it as well for anybody that might watch this later and not be able to see your comment, if you could just recite that, please. If you're still on. Yeah. No.
My response to that, the 2-year term, is beneficial to the lodge in a lot of respects. If there is a lack of preparation or merit in the leadership development of the progressive nature of the line, that allows for, on the backside, for future leaders of the lodge to develop and prepare for different positions that they may acquire within the lodge. The only caveat that I would give to that is, does the 2-year stymie or stall the progression of younger members who are fully capable of moving on towards the east? One of the things that you don't want to do is frustrate members of the lodge to a point to where they feel like there is no movement. But the 2-year mastership does have plenty of positive effects on the development of the leadership of the lodge. And one of the things that Brother Jeremiah was talking about in his presentation, and that came to my mind when he was talking about that, was leadership development. You know, it's not a guarantee just because that you're in the line that you're going to move to the east or move to a chair that is senior to the chair that you're in. That it should be based on meritocracy and merit, and by those individuals that are committed to the lodge. But the only caveat to that is, again, you don't want to frustrate and stall the line to prevent people from moving and acquiring additional skill, ability, and knowledge within the different positions within the lodge. I hope that answered the question.
And I would like to add that I think that the strongest reason for it is the improvement in the ritual. And you will see it when people have 2 years and they learn and do the ritual, and that first year they keep doing that same ritual for another year while they're learning their next one. And I do think that there will be observable improvement in the ritual as a result of doing the 2-year terms. That's my main motivation for advocating it.
Yeah, thank you. And I think in case you didn't read through my message, I think one of the things that was unique in our situation is that this wasn't the idea of shifting to a 2-year term was not something that is trying to be pushed on our officers. It was actually the younger officers coming to us old crusty past masters and saying, hey, we're not getting the experience we think we need. We would like to shift to 2 years. So I said, it's hard to argue with that.
That's how it came up in my lodge as well.
Yeah.
We,
I appreciate the help, gentlemen.
Yeah, we've dealt with this fair amount since probably 2018 at Lexington. You'll definitely likely get some pushback from some of the older members, brothers that have been there for some time, because it's usually different, unique to them, and not in a way that they think is maybe right for the craft or for the lodge. I've heard some through the grapevine that if you can't have a new master every year or a progressive line, then there must be something wrong with your lodge. Maybe something's broken because somebody has to sit there again, which isn't necessarily true by any means whatsoever, but that's something that you might encounter. One of the things we've also done is, not recently, but we started for a few years, is we have assistant positions. So we have an assistant marshal, we have an assistant junior deacon, we have an assistant senior deacon. So when there are excess where they would fit a good role, then we put them into that role as an assistant in some nature so they can still participate. So there's a lot of ways to make it work. And as long as I think the lodge has a plan, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year long range plan that we're all working together on, I think a multi-year master certainly would be a worthwhile consideration, if not other positions too. So it's worked well for us, very well for Lexington.
And the biggest resistance that you get, especially from the older members, not counting myself, of course, but their response is, that's not the way we've always done it. And I think that the convincing argument in response to that is, we are supposed to be in a fraternity for the purpose of making good men better. And you can't become a better man by continuing to do everything the way you always did it.
Yeah.
We're having to make those kind of changes to accomplish making ourselves better. We have to change some of what we've done in the past.
Yeah. All right. Brother Morrow, yes, quickly. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, well, just adding to what Brother Gerald just said, honestly, there's a lot of talk we differ, right, on the discussion of if Masonry is in trouble or not because of the membership. But I do want to point out that if the things have been done differently, we may be in a better stance right now, or worse, of course, but probably if you just stick to, we have always done it this way, things are just going to keep on going the way they are. And I completely agree with Brother Gerald. Things have to be improved or, not changed, but provided in some other ways that are more appealing or that have better companionship with whatever current culture or trend or technology is on. So I'm with Brother Gerald on this. Things have to be tried to improve so we can make things better according to the times we're living. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mario. Great comments. Worship Brother Kimball, sorry to have you wait, but I know you have a question or comment, and then Worship Brother Bizak, we'll end on you as well.
Brother Jeremiah, what a splendid presentation. Thank you so much. A wonderful job. And my comment initially is directed to the other men who are a part of this assembly this evening, and that is, this presentation this evening is a reminder to me of why I am optimistic about the future of Freemasonry. Obviously, we have a young man here who is engaged in Freemasonry, and I think that's the takeaway from tonight's program. When you have a young man, in this instance, an extremely intelligent and capable young man, who brings his talents to Freemasonry and engages, great things happen. And I think we've seen a part of that this evening. And that I think repeats itself in other places, in other lodges, in other circumstances. But the totality of that is that we do have a future, and I'm very happy to see that. Brother Jeremiah, one of your points, it's near the end of your presentation, speaks to a phrase that quite frankly drives me crazy every time I hear it. And that is, you get out of Freemasonry what you put into it. And I don't know that I've ever been to a degree in any lodge, any place where I haven't heard somebody at the end of the degree work get up and say that to the newly initiated or passed or raised brother. And that statement is patently false. I mean, it's just not true. And I think you are, to a large extent, an example of that. My assertion is this, that if you engage with Freemasonry at all and put anything into it, you will get exponentially more out of Freemasonry than you've put into it. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's definitely like a more concise and eloquent way than I was saying it. I think that was just kind of my point. The exponential thing was the positive feedback loop that I was talking about. You want this brother over here putting in some, and this guy over here coming and putting in stuff, and this brother is gaining, he's reaping the benefits of this brother over here, what he's putting into it. And if everybody is consistently doing that, then you'll have a healthy lodge and a healthy culture, and people will really see the value in it, and I agree. I kind of agree. I think that's probably a better way. Maybe I'll rewrite it. I'll rewrite it. But no, it's true. If you just the modicum amount of effort putting into it, and again, in the right lodge around the right group of people can just, things can explode and things can change and things can exponentially grow for the better. So yeah, that's a perfect way of explaining it.
So in terms of your putting more into it, at some point in time, you had to make a conscious decision to engage. You had to say, I'm going to be all in on this. I'm going to commit to this process. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision making?
It's hard to explain. I think the best way to explain it, like I had already made that decision, like, oh, well, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do it 110%, and I don't remember when the exact moment was. It might have been kind of what I said in the thing because again, I'm going into this, I'm coming to dinner for the first time, and I don't know anybody. And actually I show up and there's one guy that I did know socially, like, okay, cool. I have somebody to connect with here, but I'm completely in the dark. Like and I was glad, I'm actually glad that it went that way. But you've got the legends and the Dan Brown stuff, and on one hand you've got the Dan Brown stuff and the mystical stuff and the secret society conspiracy stuff, but then you've also got Grandpa and his friends, and they were and I had guys that coming up at work who weren't Masons telling me like, hey, I heard you're asking so and so about Freemasonry, and let me tell you, those are a great bunch of guys, and they never let a widow or orphan go hungry in my town when I was growing up. And like, if that's something you want to be into, like, you'd be great for it. So I'm getting every kind of message. But ultimately all I know is, fish fries and lapel pins. And on the other hand, you've got, well, there's secret society that's trying to control the universe. It's like, I had no idea. So when I came in there, I was like, well, this is either going to be super interesting or it's going to be just basically a guy's club. And it was when PM I was talking to, and that was the guy on the membership committee. because he was asking me like on the phone, like why do you want to join? And I'm interested. I'm curious. I have all these different reasons and all these different thoughts. And I want to get out of the house. I was like, well, I want to be more involved in my community. I gave a generic answer like that. And I want, and charity, I could help with charity. That's good. And he said, we are a charitable organization for sure, 100%. He's like, but this is a system of moral instruction. I don't think he actually used the word self-improvement, but it was moral instruction. And that's, I was like, okay. Oh, okay, cool. This is interesting. And then that started like, okay, I'm going to read books. I'm going to talk to everyone I know. I can figure out like, oh, wow, this has been around for 300 plus years, 400 years. Like this is it's a system of moral instruction. Like this is what do you call it? Oh, non-denominational, right? So it's accepting of all different kinds of viewpoints and philosophies, and it attracts guys like me, similar-minded people. So I mean that was probably the moment, like, aha, like a system of moral instruction. This isn't just some guys making spaghetti. This is there's something real here that's more interesting than a Dan Brown book and more exciting than fish fries. That was pretty much it. And at this point in my life, my age, like if I'm going to get into something, like if it's not worth giving 100%, it's just not really worth doing.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Well said. Well said. All right. Thank you, Worship Brother Kimball. Worship Brother Bizak.
Jeremiah's excellent presentation. I admire your clarity on these things that you've spoken on tonight. So thank you for that. 2 quick questions. What are the dues at Broad Ripple today?
185.
And are you a member of any appendant body?
No. I am Broad Ripple, Vitruvian, Dwight L. Smith, and no. I'm a member of the Scottish Rite Research Society and Philalethes, but that's not a appendant body. But that's the extent of my involvement. I'm not in a hurry to. All of it fascinates me. I'm interested in all of it, but I'm not going to, like you guys were all saying tonight, like I'm not going to spread myself too thin, and I'm not in a hurry to. I mean, Scottish Rite's always going to be there. Royal Arch is always going to be there. I'm going to do all that stuff eventually, but not anytime soon, I don't think.
Good for you. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Brother Jeremiah, thank you so much. What a great presentation. Great discussion. It takes everybody a little bit of time to warm up sometimes, but when we do, we can get hot. And that was a good Q&A back and forth. So thank you for spearheading that tonight. And look forward to having you on again, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Once again, this is an honor and a privilege. And I maybe I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen most of them. And Rubicon was one of the first. Right around the time I first joined, you going around on the internet and you find podcasts and different things. And I immediately gravitated towards this immediately. It's like, this is what I want. I want highly esteemed, educated brothers who have either written books or real lodge experience, or, that want to share these topics in I hate to say it, I mean this with all respect, but like just dry, like give me straightforward, like we'll have an opening, we have a prayer, and we'll have a presentation and then a discussion. And it's not, and a lot, the podcast world, people have to be exciting, and there's different segments, and there's different this and there's different that. It's like, I just want a regular lecture. I want a regular lecture, an academic style, and good discussion afterwards. So anyway, Rubicon's been my thing, and I'm a big advocate for it, and I was really honored to be asked to do it. So I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and we appreciate it equally. All right, brethren, let's move on. A few more closing comments and then we'll call it a night. Our next Masonic education is Monday, November 25th. Worshipful Brother Bizak, will you please announce our speaker for next month?
Our speaker will be Chris Ruley. He is a Master Mason out of Washington, D.C. He's a member of the board of the Philadelphia Society, and he's going to speak on his new book about General Lafayette. So I would encourage you to make room for that one. New information about Lafayette that's interesting not only to Masons, but to American history.
Excellent. That'll be
How do you spell Ruli, John?
R-U-L-I.
Great. Thank you. Brethren, for those of you that were able to join us in Lexington, Kentucky for our recent festive board and conference, we want to thank you. Thank you for sticking it out. It was very wet. We got through it somehow with a lot of towels and some hot coffee. But it was a very, I would say, a very good success. And we have a lot of media videos that we're going through and trying to put together and edit and share with you soon. So please be patient. We will do that. But again, thank you all very much for your support. We already have the next year in the works, possibly even nailed down, and we will announce that soon so you can mark your calendars. For those of you who didn't make it this year, can absolutely come and make it next year.
And if you can go, you should. It's really outstanding.
Thank you, Jared. Very good. And although the 2024 education video has not been produced yet, you can see the 2023 here by visiting this link. It is on our YouTube channel. Go check it out. And the next one will be up there as soon as possible. If anyone is interested in furthering their Masonic knowledge outside of the Rubicon Masonic Society or your lodge or books, I strongly recommend checking out thecraftsman.org. This is the website of our very own Worshipful Brother John Bizak. He has compiled numerous papers, books, topics of discussion, commentaries, and it's a great resource for Masonic education. So go check that out, thecraftsman.org. And Worshipful Brother Bizak, if you wouldn't mind, say a few good things about the Philadelphia Society, our friends there.
Sure. Brothers, if you're not familiar with the Philadelphia Society, it was founded in 1928. It's an international Masonic research society, and it's the oldest independent Masonic research society in North America. It was started to serve the needs of those looking for some little deeper insight into the history and our rituals and symbols of Masonry, as well as spreading Masonic light. If you want to learn more about that, and a quarterly journal, which is the Journal of Masonic Research and Letters, I'll put a link in the chat box here and send that out to you. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to get a hold of me. But I encourage you to at least visit their website and take a look at what is offered.
Yeah. For $60 a year, you can't go wrong, brothers. Rubicon Masonic Society has completed and provided and published a Transactions Volume 1. If you haven't had a chance, go check that out. Proceeds go to the Rubicon Masonic Society. We appreciate it. And the Volume 2 is in the works, and we will let you know once that is out. But this is the first one you want to grab. And of course, if you haven't seen our documentary, The Masonic Table, please go watch that. Give us your feedback, your comments. It's on Amazon Prime, and a lot of work and time went into that. A lot of great stories and commentaries in that as well. If you're ever curious to know how we handle our festive boards, you'll find it all right there at the Masonic Table. Are there any other final comments before we proceed to close? Hearing none. Worshipful Brother Alan Martin, will you please deliver our closing devotion?
Brothers, Grand Architect of the Universe, as we now prepare to close our time together this evening, pray that you will endue us with the competency of your divine wisdom, that we may be better enabled to conduct our lives as just and upright men and Masons. We ask that you bless us with the continued awareness that even though we may be separated by space, we are strongly united to each other in our faith, hope, and love for each other and for all persons. Guide our thoughts and actions, fortifying every moral virtue within us, Grant us the necessary strength, wisdom, and courage as we endeavor to work for your great purposes through Masonry. Amen.
So motivated. Thank you, brother. Brothers, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Again, our next meeting, November 25th, Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are already on our list, no need to RSVP again. However, you're welcome to. We will send out RSVP Zoom meeting notices the morning of on November 25th. Anyone else can RSVP at rubiconmasonersociety.com/RSVP. Brothers, thank you for always being something that I look forward to personally each and every month, to be around good men. So with that being said, may we always be happy to meet, sorry to part, and happy to meet again. Have a great night, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.